Felicity, thanks very much for joining us. It would be interesting to get your sense of some of the mega trends in terms of capital raising, particularly a big focus on ESG, purpose-driven investment, social impact. How are you seeing that, I suppose, at NREP?
I don't think it's going to come as a surprise to you, Richard, that ESG, social impact, is high up on an investor's agenda. If I look back over my 16-year career in real estate, it has significantly moved up over the last sort of 5 years. It's gone from tick box to now being an absolute essential that, institutional investors have to get past their own internal IC. I think managers that are not thinking about it will start to be in a position where they will not be attracting capital. So it is extremely critical. And I think, we've talked about it before, Richard, but the big rise in sustainability teams and having head of ESG is not going to abate, and managers need to take that very seriously. And I think just in terms of the trends that we're seeing in real estate, particularly around residential, around logistics, we're continuing to see that connection with how that plays out on impact. Obviously, residential and then the subsectors of residential in living. So, everything from student accommodation, multifamily, senior living, and obviously care. They are becoming increasingly important and a high focus, and many of them have a huge social impact too, just in the nature of what they are. And that involves more than just an investment manager now who's placing capital into that market. It's a full stakeholder relationship. So it's everybody from the tenants to municipalities where, care homes are involved. And I think that's going to increase too.
And is there more of an acceptance, I suppose, from institutional investors around investing in these more kind of operational areas like healthcare and senior living, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a number of reports out over the last year about the rise of operational real estate, and it's taking a bit of time to get investors' heads around what that means. So I think something that investors and investment managers are really having to think about is how they structure their teams to deliver operational real estate. And it's a decision, do you bring this in-house, which is something that NREP have decided to do, or are you going to be looking for best-in-class operator supporters to deliver that? And, it has an impact in terms of how you underwrite and think about that piece of real estate when you also have to be considering the operational element too. But what I think is very strong with the operational side is that, you've got to think about an asset beyond even your ownership. And that's where it's really exciting, because you need to think of it that way. And then you bring in the ESG and the sustainability element, and you've just got this much stronger stewardship over assets over a much longer period. And that's a mindset change, I think, for institutional real estate.
Do you see, I suppose, particularly given the focus there on the Nordics, that has more of a history in terms of that ESG social investment side?
Yeah, I think it's front and centre in the Nordics, and that's partly the way that they're set up politically as well. The societies are set up to be supportive of the population. So again, what we saw during COVID is actually the Nordic countries performed very well, and that's because there is an underwritten, government-backed subsidies for residential care, and that has really enabled people to not feel vulnerable, that they're not going to have a house, over their head, which is quite different. So it's just inbuilt and implicit into that sort of society. But, I think there are some trends which you're seeing more broadly across Europe, and that's frankly bringing the human back into real estate. So who is the end occupier? Who's the end user? Who's the end tenant? And moving beyond just putting them into a number on a spreadsheet, but actually what are we trying to deliver for the occupier of that building to have a better quality life? And whether that's in the Nordics, and yes, I believe that they're ahead, but we're certainly seeing that happening much more broadly, and an expectation that you need to be building that into your properties and your strategies.
Really interesting to catch up, and particularly that user-centric kind of evolution in terms of the real estate side will be really interesting to watch. Thanks very much for joining us, Felicity.
Thanks, Richard.